next speaker, I want to go ahead and I want to point out a couple of things that Miss Lisa did point out as well. You know, part of the reason why we are joked around about at work and made fun of by our relatives because of our belief in knowing what we know is because we are so divided. And we squabble amongst ourselves over topics, and we point fingers at each other a lot of times. And I think that really leads to the fact that, you know, we're looked at by the general public, by, you know, the media and everything, as kind of a joke to begin with, because hell, we can't even agree amongst ourselves, you know? And so when you really think about it, we're actually harming ourselves by fussing and feuding and stuff. And, you know, you can parallel that to a lot of different things in society, but the truth is I think we could probably get a lot further if we worked together and not against each other. Now, how that plays out in the long run, I don't know. I can't go there. So, but anyway, our next speaker is, well, he's handsome, witty, charming, and he's been doing cryptid research for, well, a while, and he happens to be me. So, without further ado, I'll introduce myself. Yeah. This is me. I'm Brian Terrell. I live in Enid, Oklahoma. I grew up in Oklahoma. Pretty much lived here my whole life, which is kind of weird. I went to school over here at Okmulgee Tech, and then I lived down in Oklahoma City for a long time. And that's kind of where I stumbled into my first cryptid investigation back in 1996, was at Stinchcombe Wildlife Management Area. And that was just a dumb young guy who happened to stumble on a Bigfoot sighting, and it wasn't even mine. But that's another story for another day. So, sometime, I'm going to say around 2017, I started a group, okay? And haven't had these guys with me the entire time. And we've had a couple people come and go. But I realized that Northwest Oklahoma did not really, for all intents and purposes, have any groups that were doing cryptid research in it. And so I thought, well, you know what? I'm going to do that. I'm going to be that person that people contact whenever they have something happen to them in my area, you know, and I'll document it and I'll do this, and, you know, and I'll basically prepare everything so that people have a place to go so they don't have to just remain silent, you know, because, you know, I didn't like having to keep the things that have happened to me to myself all the time. So I started this group, Red Dirt Cryptid Investigations, and we go out and we do things like actual field investigations. That's our primary bread and butter. On the side, we also maintain case files for the general public. If you've got my link, if you go to my Facebook page, there's a link there. We've got 380 case files now, and I am actually really far behind, that everyone has access to. Anybody familiar with Excel, the program? Okay, the program I use is called Airtable. It's a lot like Excel, except it's free, okay? Happens to be in my price range, okay? So I got turned on to this from Ryan White, the Squatch Ranger, who was also using that to categorize all of his. But I kind of wanted to do something a little bit different. Instead of just doing Bigfoot, I wanted to spread it out, and I wanted to start a database for all cryptids. Okay? This is one of my pet peeves. I am not a big fan of smoke and mirrors or theatrics or something like that. So when you watch my YouTube channel, you're gonna find that there's not a whole lot of, oh, what was that? Oh, did you hear that? You know, there's not a whole lot of that because that's not how it's really done in the field. And every once in a while, it happens. But there's one thing I can promise you. Those things never happen when the camera's rolling. Am I wrong? Shame. It's never right when that happens. So the only thing that I can truly promise you is occasionally we're going to find some evidence, and it's going to be legit. No lies, no fiction, no drama. I will never, or anybody on my team, intentionally mislead you. That's the only thing I can really promise you, okay? I'm not here to entertain you, unfortunately. And that costs me numbers. So what kind of cryptids do we investigate? Okay, Sasquatch, of course, that makes up our lion's share of our case files. I would say of the 380, probably 240 of them at least are Bigfoot related reports. Most of my reports are Class A. I would say maybe 10% of them are Class B, but most of them are Class A. Not that there's anything wrong with Class B reports. I think they're valuable. It's just, and I don't have a whole lot of time. So, Sasquatch, dogmen, flying cryptids. I take deer woman reports and little people. I'm still waiting on my first real chupacabra report. And of course, whatever else you've got. If you've got something that's weird that's going on your property, I'm interested in it. I draw the line at UFOs. There are other people out there who can do that. I just don't have time, okay? If I tried doing UFOs, I'd spend all my time on UFOs, and that would be all I'd have time to do. Okay? There's plenty of other people that are doing that. We've got our own Oklahoma MUFON that can handle all that, right? But I am especially interested, especially here lately, in strange light phenomena. But we're not even going to talk about that today. So, let's just go ahead and rip the Band-Aid off, right? Dogmen. Some people think that they're strictly paranormal, okay? Some people think that they're physical. And we're really kind of getting out there when we start talking about this stuff. But the truth is, I go by what my evidence, what my database is showing me, okay? I talk to people, I listen to their stories, and I compile it. And when you've got, I think I've got 70 dogman case files right now for the state of Oklahoma and southern Kansas, okay? And when you've got that many, you can start putting them together and you can start coming up with some conclusions, okay? And one of the conclusions that I've come to is I have 0 reports of dogmen getting off of a UFO, okay? I have 0 reports of a dogman stepping through a portal, okay? Now, I'm not saying that portals don't exist, but what I am saying is I don't have any reports of that, okay? I try to consider, now, I'm open-minded to the paranormal, supernatural aspect of it, but I don't let that guide my thought processes or my philosophies. I try my best, and it's hard sometimes, to be an evidence-based investigator, okay? And it gets harder every day, you know, because there's all kinds of weird stuff going on. So what I can do is I can go off of the evidence that I've compiled, okay? Now, I created this, I don't know, when was that? Back in December, okay? And I posted this on my Facebook page. And at that time, I had 65 case files, right, of dogman encounters. You can see I go up into Kansas just a little bit, okay? These case files come from all over. These are not just where people have called in to me and said, hey, you know, I saw a dogman. Man, I'm a thief. I steal case files from everywhere, okay? Brian Hoolan gave me a dogman report that is Probably this one, right here, you know? I'll take it, and the reason why is because I think somebody needs to take all these things and put them where they belong. If you go into my case files, you'll notice at the bottom, I list where I got that report from, and I give credit where credit is due. If you go to that case file where Brian messaged me and told me about this white dog man that was on the side of I-40, if you go to the bottom, it's got his name right there, okay? So, at least I'm an honest thief, right? Okay. So, man, that's a lot, and it's actually higher than that. I would be willing to say that if I actually got caught up in my paperwork, it would be 75 or maybe 80, okay? But it's been a busy couple of months. We know a lot about Sasquatch, don't we? We know a lot. We've got a lot of reports. We've got a lot of evidence. We've got a lot, okay? And we can draw on that evidence in those reports, and we can come to a lot of conclusions. But it's not that easy with dogmen. I would be willing to bet you that Sasquatch research is easily 30 years ahead of dogman. Dogman research is basically where Sasquatch research was back in the maybe early 80s, if we're lucky. You know, the word just got out, what, 15 years ago? Prior to 15 years ago, nobody even really, I don't even think Linda Godfrey had coined the term dogman back then. And it's a terrible name, Linda, God rest your soul. So, but what we do know thus far is that they rarely leave prints, okay? When I say rarely, I mean they do leave prints. We have found prints, and we can occasionally get our hands on some prints, but 90% of all dogman prints will easily pass as a domestic canine. The largest wolf tracks that you're going to run across are 5 inches across. I mean, that's really not physically that large. I mean, their feet are not gargantuan size like a Sasquatch. So your average person could walk right by a set of dogman tracks and they wouldn't even recognize them for what they are. So I think a lot of dogman tracks get overlooked unless they are absolutely gargantuan, okay? So what are you looking at? Well, I mean, what would you say, Shane? Yeah, you know, a size, the average Joe person could, you know, actually look at, say, a 12-inch footprint of a human, of a Bigfoot, and possibly think, well, you know, it's just a person, and just keep walking, right? Yeah. I mean, they probably get overlooked all the time. It's not until you get into the 14-inch and up that people are like walking around like, whoa, holy moly, look at the size of that. It takes a big Sasquatch to get noticed by average Joes. And I think that that factor is a lot greater when it comes to dogmen, because I think like 95% of all dogman prints completely go unnoticed. Okay? The evidence is out there, we're just not recognizing it. Okay? I had a lady a couple of months ago, she sent me a video on her phone, and it was these canine tracks, you know? And she said, well, do you think these are, because she'd had a dogman encounter, not while she was walking out on a country road by her house. And she says, well, do you think this could be a dogman print? I go, well, I'm pretty sure it is a dogman print. And she's like, well, how do you know? And I said, well, those prints are, you know, bipedal. And she's like, what do you mean? I said, well, think about it. When a dog walks, they got 2 feet, 2 feet, 2 feet, right? What you're looking for is bipedal canine footprints. Okay? Chances are you're not going to notice unless you're really paying attention. Okay? Moving on. They do not stick close to water sources. You know, like what's the old saying? They always follow the rivers, right? And boy, they nailed that back in, what was that, 1972 or whatever? When they made that movie, they nailed that. They're right. But this is not the case with dogmen. Some of the dogmen reports that we get are in the middle of nowhere. Middle of nowhere, okay? No water around anywhere. I think they move around a lot, but it's hard to prove. But we get a lot of reports that are not close to water, okay? Number 3, they are reported coming in town at night just as much as Bigfoot are. I have gotten a lot of Bigfoot reports and dogman reports where they're coming into town at night. Now, I don't necessarily have a whole lot of reports that involve them digging in dumpsters like you get with Sasquatch, but I've heard tell of them coming up and eating your dog food off the back porch. Anybody leave their dog food out on the back porch? Think about it. You might be feeding them and you don't know it. But yes, a lot of them are reported in town, okay? Now, some of the things that are disturbing is we get a lot of reports of people that when they see one, they see more than one, okay? And sometimes there's actually stories of them herding people out of areas very similar to Bigfoot activity, and they do it in a pack formation. And it's kind of unusual, especially when there's packs of like 10. So I hope I don't ever stumble into one of those situations. A lot of their behaviorisms and mannerisms that we get are very similar to Sasquatch reports. They will follow you out, okay? They will escort you out like a Sasquatch will whenever you're not where you're at. There's a lot of really intelligent moves that seem to come out of them. It's like they don't want to kill you, they just want you to leave. And there's, you know, you hear the same stories play out over and over again. With Bigfoot reports, these will do the same thing. They've been known to throw rocks, okay? So there is more than 2 animals out there that will throw rocks at you at night. They're also frighteningly known to move, even the adults, to move through trees, especially at night. And that's kind of scary. It's not just the little ones either, it's some of the bigger ones. I don't think these creatures, if you put them on the scale, I don't think they would go as heavy as a Sasquatch. But that's just my opinion. But sometimes, you know, when you look at their tracks, you know, their tracks don't go real deep either, like some of the Sasquatch prints, like, you know, Southern Bigfoot guys got over there. I mean, you know, they're over there using 70 pounds of plaster over there just to get the cast in there because it's so deep, you know, and that just shows they're really, really heavy animals. All right, we're going to take some time and we're going to talk about some reports, okay? So that's what I really did. Well, you can't read that, can you? So what you're looking at over here on, I guess it'd be your left, that blurry object right there is a snip of one of my case files, okay? Like I said, I have like 380 case files that are free for you to look at, okay? And this one here is Red Dirt case file number 154. Anybody know where Shawnee, Oklahoma is? Yeah, there was a couple that was over there that lived outside of town. And they had a scenario where they had possibly more than one dogman living in the close proximity and around their house. And, you know, there was several situations where they actually had run-ins with these creatures. And one of my buddies, his name's Brandon, he's cousins with, I believe, the guy, the husband. And I got to visit with them. They were on Dogman Encounters Radio. And it was just a very frightening ordeal for this couple because at a certain point it got to where they couldn't even go outside at night because these creatures were out there and it was all the time. The lady ran into one trying to take the trash out and put it on the curb. It was out there in the street. They were in the backyard. I mean, I guess the neighbors had it figured out because, you know, they had gone to Lowe's and bought out all the lights that they could get, and they had perimeter lighting all the way around their house, and it's just a long, drawn-out, scary story. And eventually, they ended up moving because, you know, they weren't even comfortable there, you know. And I don't remember what town they moved out to, but they moved away because they just didn't even want to be around that. So you can have full access to that and read it, but even better, there's a link down at the bottom if you go to the case files to that particular Dogman Encounters story. Right now, let's see. Oh, here's another one. Red Dirt Cryptid case file number 309. 7-foot tall bipedal coyote reported near Tallahena, Oklahoma. Now, Tanya does not like me talking about this stuff, especially when it's close to Tallahena. That's okay though. I kind of like scaring her. This is another one that happened somewhere around here. I've talked to Tanya, and I've talked to a few of the locals around here. We have no idea who this lady is, but apparently she lives close to a lake. I'm guessing it might be north of here, maybe on the edge of Lake Wister, something like that. But she's seen one come walking into her backyard. You know, and it just so happened that it happened right after her husband left to go to work and she was home alone. Can you imagine dealing with that? You know, I mean, the truth is, these creatures, if they wanted you, they could. I mean, you could run inside and lock the doors. They could still come get you if they wanted to. But the truth is it's a lot like Sasquatch reports. They don't want you. If they wanted you, they would have had you, but they don't. That was 2017. Now, this is an interesting one. This one was also on Dogman Encounters Radio, and Vic Cundiff called me, and he was like, "Hey, I got a guy I need you to talk to." And this guy was up by Sapulpa. Does anybody know where Sapulpa is? It's not that far from Tulsa proper. And there's a whole bunch of reports of dogman activity around Tulsa. And anyway, I called this guy and I talked to him, and he's a young guy, and I can tell you just by talking to this guy on the phone, I don't even think he had any idea what a dogman was before. I mean, he was just, you know, he'd been out of school 2 or 3 years, got a job in the medical industry, he was working as a medical assistant, just got done buying him a brand new hot rod car, and he was proud of it, and he was all about his car, and he was running samples from one town to another over there. He was actually running from Bristow over, I don't remember where he said he was going, but he ended up going through Sapulpa. But this encounter happened as he was pulling into Bristow, okay? And this creature came out at night and was running alongside his car for a couple miles. I mean, it was literally like chasing his vehicle. You know how dogs will chase cars? Some dogs will chase cars. And, you know, I don't think it takes a genius to figure out that the smart dogs don't really chase cars, because the end result, it's always the same, you know. If you've got a dog that's chasing cars, if you don't take that dog inside, eventually we all know how that's going to play out, right? Well, you know, we sit here and we talk about how smart these dog men are, but then here we've got one that's actually chasing cars down the highway, right? So this guy was completely freaked. And I talked to him a couple of weeks after this whole thing went down. And because it takes time, you know. The thing happens, the kid's like, what the heck? He goes to the internet, he's searching werewolf or whatever, and then he stumbles across this Dogman Encounters Radio, and he calls Vic, and Vic talks to him, and you know, Vic's like, man, you got to talk this guy down off the ledge, you know. And but he was super. I mean, and it had been 2, maybe 3 weeks whenever I finally got him on the phone. And I mean, this guy is, I mean, he's a young man, you know, he's supposed to be macho. Oh no, just talking to him on the phone, I mean, his voice was shaking, and he was kind of like, I mean, you could tell he was reliving it, he was scared. And he ended up getting a different job because he wasn't gonna do that anymore. Because that job required him transporting medical samples from one location to another, and it was just in his job description. It's like, you gotta move this stuff. And he's like, well, I ain't doing this anymore. So he started looking for another job, and he got one. But very nice young man, educated, never had a clue what was going on. And then one day, his whole world got turned upside down. His goal right now, the last time I talked to him, is he just doesn't ever want to see one again. He doesn't want to think about it anymore. And sadly, a lot of people deal with that. So you can read about that in my report, and even better, you can listen to him tell his story on Darwin Encounters Radio. So that's just a couple. And like I said, I've got, at least 65 more in the case files that you can go through, going all the way back to like 1910, all the way up to present day. We've still got them coming in. So let's go ahead and let's move on to Bigfoot. Okay, everybody's favorite. Everybody loves Bigfoot. He's everybody's friendly, and depending on what podcast you listen to, he's either a fuzzy, friendly forest giant that's there to protect you and to protect nature, and he wants to braid your hair and put flowers in your hair, or he wants to eat your liver. It's one extreme to the other. Now, the one thing I have learned in my few years of actually indulging myself in this, Bigfoot, social media, drama, whatever you want to call this mess, is that the bloodthirsty Bigfoot that wants to eat your liver, those sell more. They do. They tend to make for more likes and subscribes and thumbs up, and they tend to make your YouTube check be a little bit bigger at the end of the month. Again, I am going to go back to Old Faithful. I'm going to go back to my personal case files, okay? And the reason why I kind of lean on the ones that I have, and not necessarily ones that are from all across the nation, is I can personally vouch for the ones that I have in my case files. I know most of them, and believe it or not, I have left a few case files out because I don't think that they were legitimate. But I do everything I can to give eyewitnesses the credibility that they deserve and the benefit of the doubt, okay? Because not everybody is a liar. You guys have heard about the siege of Hanabi, Honobi, however you say that. I always say Hanabi, and I get corrected a lot, and it's okay. I think we all know what we're talking about. Now, this is a classic case of hype, okay? Now, I'm not going to put down what actually happened here. There was some really cool stuff that happened down there, and it must have been an extremely exciting thing to go through, and it was probably horrifying. And the one that I really feel sorry for is this guy's wife. She ended up being the smart one, and she was the first one to bail and take the kids and apparently go live with her mother-in-law. And the guys kept going, and the truth is we really don't know what happened here. There's about 4 different stories, depending on which one you want to believe. And each one involves a slightly different narrative of how everything got started and how everything went down. But the one thing that we do know for sure is that somewhere around, 2000, somewhere around January, there was a Bigfoot that was killed over there, okay? And the story changes and splits off from there, and it goes a lot of different ways. But the amazing thing about the story is, and the reason why I bring it up today, is because it does not matter which research group you go to, whether it's the MARBC or whether it's the Southern Bigfoot Alliance or whether it's the Native Oklahoma Bigfoot Research Organization or whatever. The one thing that's amazing, and this rarely ever happens, is they all agree that there was a Bigfoot that got killed there. They agree on that. You can go down to the townsfolk and you can talk to the people that were there, that lived there. Yeah, that happened. It's really happened. It's kind of a unique story in the fact that nobody that was there denies that it happened, really. Everybody is kind of in agreement on that. So therefore, it's kind of infamous. Now, I am not here to go through and talk about all the different types of stories and whether somebody was telling the truth or who is to blame or how we could have avoided this. I think that is a waste of time. The only people that know about this and know what really happened and were actually there firsthand, they're not talking. Okay? They got disgusted with the whole thing and they're done. They're done talking about it. And I can understand that. So, Bigfoot at Beaver's Bend. This may be one that you haven't heard about. Okay? This is one of my favorites. Now, I'm not exactly sure what year this happened, but I'm pretty sure that it was fairly recently. You guys know where Beaver's Bend is, right? It's like a little state park just down south of here, real pretty. You get down there, you feel like you're in Colorado, right? It's great down there. Well, apparently there's a restaurant down there, and I have never personally ate there. But at this restaurant, kind of out in the country, there was a refrigeration service tech, okay? Who was out there working on a walk-in cooler or something. So naturally, love the guy. He's great. You know why? That's what I do. So, the guy's obviously of high intelligence, and he's obviously of the highest moral caliber because of his profession. So, I'm a little, but I guess he was out there on the roof trying to fix this walk-in cooler, and he had one standing in the wood line watching him. And again, this is another one of those situations where this poor guy's just trying to work. He's not out there trying to get his 15 minutes of fame. He just wants to get this cooler online so he can get this customer happy, so he can go home, you know. And he's just trying to make a living. And he didn't ask for this. And here he is. He's got this thing standing over there, probably over there by a service truck. And he's like, what am I going to do here, you know? So anyway, he reports this strange encounter. I would like to get some more information on this because I really don't know where or what this guy's name is. As a matter of fact, I don't have a specific date on this particular case file. A lot of my case files are missing key bits of information, okay? Especially when you're getting them second or third hand. Okay? So if anybody knows that guy, tell him to holler at me. Okay? Now, this is one I'm pretty sure that you haven't heard about. We got any Kansans in here? No Kansans? Well, I guess we got a lot of Texans, but we're running short on we're running short on Kansans today. I told you that I go up into Kansas, right? Okay. Kansas is not as barren a Bigfoot as you would think. As a matter of fact, they've actually got quite a few reports. I will go up there, but the only reason that I even do it, it's kind of like a pity thing. They don't have anybody up there doing any kind of research whatsoever. And I kind of feel bad for them, you know. So I went up there and I started just crossing the line, going across the state line. And I started looking into some of these things. And I realized very quickly, it's like, man, this is gold, right? So I get this message from this lady. And this lady, this poor lady, she's like, hey, I need you to call me. I want to report a Bigfoot sign. And the message that I got on Facebook Messenger was like super concise, like boom, just matter of fact, there it is. So I'm like, okay. So I get her on the phone and I'm talking to the lady. She's like, well, this is going to be kind of hard to believe. And I'm like, well, I specialize in that. And she's like, okay, well, here it goes. So she gives me her address, right? And she says, this is where I live. I live in town. I live on the edge of town in our city. And I'm like, okay. And she says, 2 nights ago, I had to go outside because my dog had to pee. She has a little bitty dog. And she said the dog was barking at the door. The dog needed to go outside and pee. And it was about 1 o'clock in the morning. So she said, I put on my bathrobe, and she goes, I go out in the front yard with my little dog, and she goes, I'll stand out there in my bathrobe at 1 o'clock in the morning. So she goes out there, the dog goes running out there, runs out to the front yard, goes about 4 or 5 foot out in the grass. She steps out on the front porch, and all of a sudden she looks at the dog, and the dog is not doing its thing. It's frozen. And she's like, what's he doing? And she looks, and he's looking over in this direction. So she looks over there, and there's a street light right there. It's right on the edge of her property. And standing underneath that street light is this giant Sasquatch just standing there frozen under the light. And she says she looks at it, she's like, what is this? And she's like, there's nothing else it could be. I mean, it's literally standing under a street light. And she said about that time, she said she didn't really know how long it passed, but she said she was just like dumbstruck, awestruck. She's sitting there looking at this thing. And she said then her dog starts backing up. How often do you see dogs back up backwards? This dog is backing up. And then it takes about 4 or 5 steps backwards, and then it turns around and bolts in the house. And she's like, I need to do the same. So she goes in the house, shuts the door, locks the big wooden door on the front of her house. She runs over to the window and looks out, and it's gone. It's literally gone. And she's like, if it wasn't for my dog, I think I'd lost my mind. But she said, the dog saw it too. And I got to looking at the Google Earth, the Google satellites, whatever you want to call it. And this lady does live right on the edge, but she lives like right next to a nursing home, right next to a Chinese food restaurant. She literally, trust me, I was looking at that dumpster. Okay. But there's like a series of buildings and churches that this thing could have been coming in to hit the dumpsters, right? It was very fascinating. And since then, Eric and I, we have been out there kind of looking around. We've had our ears to the ground, especially when it involves anything. And we've actually identified a path that goes from outside of town into town that has cover. And we believe that this creature, this Bigfoot, is coming into town and using this creek line to sneak into town to raid dumpsters every once in a while. So we've got a guy in Ark City who is checking on it periodically. I haven't touched base with him about this one in what do you say, Eric, has it been a couple of months? We haven't, yeah, it's been a while since we checked up on that one. We probably need to, but there's a distinct trail from the Walnut River that goes right up basically into this lady's backyard. And all it's got to do is just slip in the middle of the night, and it's got all this free human food that's going to give it diabetes. But oh well. All right, we're getting towards the end here, because mine's not long. Flying cryptids, okay? Flying cryptids. I had a longer version of this, but I kind of shortened it down a little bit, because flying cryptids are something that a lot of people don't know a whole lot about. But we've actually got quite a few reports of flying cryptids in Oklahoma and southern Kansas, and even down into Texas. I know for a fact, and I don't have details, maybe Mr. Kreider can tell you, but I know there's reported pterosaur, pterodactyl sightings, whatever you want to call it, down in New Mexico too. And as we were learning, it's actually kind of a worldwide phenomenon. New Guinea is really starting to get on the map for it. And it's not just an Oklahoma thing, okay? There we go. Here's another case file. Case file number 227, right? Just north, anybody know where Caw Lake is? Caw Lake? You know where Ponca City is? There's a big lake over there. The Arkansas River flows right next to Ponca City, and it flows out of Caw Lake. And back in 1985, two boys saw a pterodactyl right at dusk flying over the river. Okay? They had their dad with them. Okay? So there's 3 eyewitnesses that reported seeing that. I talked to one of the boys, pretty interesting story. But, you know, it's real easy to hear about, you know, Bigfoot, pop culture, you know. I mean, it's you know, we got t-shirts and everything with it on, right? So it's easy for you to stretch and say, well, you know, if I'm gonna make up a good story, let's go with Bigfoot. Bigfoot's like this. People, you don't really run into people that have claimed to have seen these pterodactyl sightings. The fact that somebody claims that they've seen something like this, it's odd. It's really, really odd. I mean, I've only got like a dozen case files on these particular type of creatures in my case files, but I think it happens more than what people think, and I think that people just don't talk about it. Okay? Here's another one. This one happened in northeastern Oklahoma, Osage County. There was a man on Highway 10 in 2011 who was a rancher, you know. He's a landowner. He owns cattle. He owns a business, you know. And he had one buzz his truck while he was out checking cattle. Okay? There's a series of reports from that area. And I won't go into it. I won't bore you too much with it. But there was a series over a period of about 5 years of reports that were coming out of that area. Now, these may be connected, is my thoughts, okay? So, what do we really know about these flying cryptids, right? Okay. Many of these reportings are close to dawn or dusk. Now, there's exceptions to that, okay? There's always an exception. But my data, which is kind of limited in this particular deal, most of the reports are right at dusk or right at dawn, okay? Which makes me wonder, and makes a lot of people wonder, I'm not alone, if these are nocturnal creatures. That would explain why people are not really seeing them, okay? Is because if they're up in the sky, if they're dark colored, if it's night, you're not gonna see them, okay? It makes sense that if they were nocturnal, they'd be a lot harder to see. They might, fun fact about these, they're the only, and now I may be wrong about this one, but I believe they are the only cryptid that we actually have a fossil record for accurately, you know, other than humans, but I'll let you guys argue about all that. But we actually have fossil records for many different species of flying pterodactyl type creatures, going all the way back to the ones with feathers. So it's not a ridiculous statement. We know for a fact that creatures like this did exist, and they existed for a long time. And as a matter of fact, there's a lot of theories on the behaviorisms, their mannerisms, their diet, stuff like that. I mean, if you really start digging into these creatures, you find out that the early ones, you know, they actually had teeth, you know, that they would use, and then the later, I believe the later versions, the newer versions of them that came many generations later actually didn't have, you know, teeth in their beaks. You know, they actually had another bird-like type deal. They believe that they hunted rivers and that they basically survived off fish. We know that birds are really good at that, right? Makes sense. Almost all of the reports that I've got in my case files are close to a river. So That's about all I know about these creatures. There's theories out there, but I don't know. I try not to stretch and go out on a limb and try, table hypotheses that I really don't have any evidence to back. There's like little or no evidence of these. To the best of my knowledge, I don't know that anybody's found any footprints of these creatures. If we did, would we even know what we were looking at? What would it look like? Would it look like an ostrich foot or something like that? Giant chicken? I don't know. If you did find one, what would you think of it? I mean, would somebody even recognize it for what it was? Hard to say. I mean, it's really hard to go there. So I'm going to start wrapping up here with a story about a mystery oil field worker. And I tell this story a lot of times whenever I come out and I talk to public people, because I am really hoping that eventually I'm going to find somebody that knows this guy, okay? So when you hear a story and it just sounds super incredible, right? The first time you hear it, you're like, okay. But when you hear the story from two different people that don't even know each other, that come from two completely different backgrounds, you're like, oh, I've heard that story before. And then you meet up with another guy that has heard the same story from a different place too. 3 different stories about what happened out in western Oklahoma one time. Now, I don't have a date, I don't have a name, all I have is a story, okay? Now, I'm gonna tell you guys the story. There was a guy who is I'm assuming a pumper, or possibly some type of roustabout, or something like that. He was working on one of these tank batteries. Anybody got some of those on their property? They tell us not to play on those, something about they're dangerous or something like that. I never listened to them, and I'm still alive, right? So everybody was wrong. Well, what you do is you start down here on the ground, you climb the ladder, and you walk across here. And they make a tool called it's a weighted tape measure. I'm not sure exactly what they call it anymore, but you would gauge the tank to see how much fluid's in it, right? He was out on location. He was gauging the tank. It was dark. His truck was parked down below, and his headlights were on, okay? And everybody knows your truck lights will blind you, you have night blindness. Well, he was up there, he was working, he was doing it, and all of a sudden, it was like up above his head, he heard something, there was a gust of wind, and just all of a sudden, all hell broke loose. Something was trying to get him from above. He could hear flapping wings, he could hear noises, and he didn't know what was going on, but something latched into him, right? So what does he do? He drops down onto the platform, okay? And when he did that, that probably saved his life, because the railing was impeding this creature from getting him. He rolled off the side and hit the ground, okay? It's not that high, but it was better than the other option, okay? So he jumps the fence and hops in his truck, and whatever it is gone, okay? Now, the stories that we've heard differ a little bit. Story A was that he was unharmed miraculously. Story B was that he had some really bad gashes up in his shoulders and on one of his arms, and that he had to go to emergency room and get stitched up. Okay? That's all I know about that story. But I've been trying to find out who this fellow is for a long time. I'd like to know when it happened, and man, you gotta know, I'd love to interview that guy. I mean, how about those scars? Think about that for a second. That would be some cool scars. Problem is, people wouldn't believe you. I don't know. So, anyway, if you guys ever find that person, then make sure you send them my way. Okay, so my name's Brian Terrell. I've got books back there. Basic cryptozoology about Oklahoma. That right there, you might take your phone. See if that'll work with your phone. Can you get a picture of that? I'm not sure which one's which. Let me try my phone and see what happens. would it take you? Oh, yes, it takes me, that will take you to my YouTube channel, please like and subscribe. And if you missed that, there's one back there. Let me show you the next one. Oh, there it is, okay, yeah. This is the one I really want you guys to have access to. This is a QR code that'll take you directly to my Red Deer Cryptid case files, okay? Now, a lot of people have a hard time getting down to them. Some people, they have no problems whatsoever. They click on it, it opens up, it's like magic. Okay? You may have to actually create an account with these, okay? Which involves you giving them your email, logging in, creating a login, passcode. It's not that hard, but once you do it, you have access to all the case files that are in there. They're free, they're not mine, they don't belong to me, they belong to the people. You guys can do whatever you want to with them. You can go to your computer, you can hit Control P, you can print them all out. I don't care what you do with them, okay? And quit sending me requests for administrative rights. People keep sending me requests for admin rights. I'm like, no, I'm not gonna give you admin rights to my case files.
The page you request is only accessible from the Airtable mobile app. From the
Yes, apparently, and I think it depends on whether you have an iPhone, or whether you have an Android, or what's your service, or whatever. Some people just get right into it. But you'll have to create an account. It's super easy. All you gotta do, you can just take a picture of it and log into it later. But you can go in, you can break everything down, you can search it. You can say, for instance, you're from Murray County or whatever. Okay, if you want to, you can just go up into the search bar and you can type in Murray County. And it'll pull up all the case files that have Murray County in them, or Cleveland County, or whatever. I mean, Greer County, I don't even think I have it for Greer County. Yeah, I do. Yeah, I've got case files in Greer County. But the point is you can use that tool to find things that are going on around you, okay? Now that's got every kind of case file we've got in there. We've got Bigfoot, Dogman, flying cryptids, deer woman, little people case files, all kinds of stuff. If people have called me about it, then yeah, I do my best to document. It's not my job to judge you. My job is to document what you say. Okay? All right. Does anybody have any questions? That's it. No questions? Okay. I thought I'd be easy. Yes, sir. Mr. Whitehead.
What is the most unusual thing that you have had reported to you when you put in the case files? The strangest cryptid.
Okay, well, I'll tell you, but, well, actually I've got several, but the first one that comes to mind, you gotta promise not to throw rocks at me, okay? I didn't report it, okay, I just documented it. But I had a lady that reached out to me, from northeast Oklahoma, right up at the top, and her mother was a big fisherman her entire life. I guess her mom was like the original redneck girl, and she would go out and she would go catfishing all the time. Like if she had time to kill, she was down on the river and she was catching fish, and that was her big thing. I mean, this old woman had a freezer full of catfish year round, if you know what I mean. Well, I guess whenever the woman got old, she pulled her daughter aside and she told her, she's like, I've got something I want to tell you. And she's like, well, what's that? She goes, well, you're not going to believe me. And she's like, oh, Mom, I'll believe you. She's like, well, I don't know. So, according to this woman's daughter, this woman was out fishing out on the river, and she got a bite, and she started reeling, and it was biting, and she kept reeling and kept reeling. And out of the muddy river water came this creature that had a human-looking body, but it had a frog's head. And she said this thing come up out of the water, and it looked at her, and at first it was confused. She said it actually had like human looking, she picked up that it was confused at first, and then when it realized that it was a human that it was dealing with, I guess, she said it got a disgusted look on its face, and it basically broke the line and by pulling away and disappeared under the water. And I guess it scared the old woman pretty bad. Well, I'm gonna be frank. My first thoughts on this is the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard of. And then I Googled it. And apparently, if you go up north in one of those Yankee states up there somewhere, I don't remember, maybe it's Pennsylvania or something, there's a whole town up there that claims that they've got those things running around up there, and they actually have a festival and everything for their Frogman days or whatever. And and that's the problem with this stuff is it's like a rabbit hole that just keeps getting deeper and deeper.
I did tell you that I've received 4 similar reports like that.
Yeah, it's like, how do you classify that? That's what I have the other category for, is because I don't even know where to begin with that, And yeah, it's true that I do get a lot of weird left field stuff, but when you've got people that are writing these things down and you're documenting them and you're putting them somewhere, what ends up happening is even if I die, you guys know what happens to the internet stuff. This will live on forever, my case files. I mean, even after I'm long dead, you'll still be able to see, this stuff, and people will have access to this stuff. And that's what it's really about, because just because somebody thought you were nuts, because you saw something weird, eventually you start to figure out, man, there's other people out there that have seen these things. I will never forget whenever I saw Tim's, monster tour video about the flying demon flyer or whatever, and they were right down there in Oklahoma City metro area talking about pterodactyls. And I mean, that was like a really great day in my life, because I'd been carrying that around for a long time, and it got to the point where I didn't even, I was stupid enough to ask my coworkers, who, they're there all the time too. I figured, good God, I'm one of 12 service techs. One of these if I've seen it twice, one of these sons of bitches has seen one too. And I was dumb enough to ask one day. And that's when I got dubbed Batman and stuff like that, because at the time I didn't know what I was looking at. I mean, it just looked like a giant bat, kind of. And, it was a huge mistake on my part, I think, to try to open up to some of my fellow coworkers. And there was a lesson learned there, but I took that and I locked it away, and I didn't talk about it for years. And when I realized that not only had other people seen them, but they was actually doing YouTube videos about it and stuff, it's like I could hear angels sing. It's like, oh, it's like, this is the greatest stuff ever, And then you find out that there's a series of reports, all across the nation, across the world, and that's why these reports need to be documented. That's why this boring, mundane work, this research, and that's why it needs to be done, is so that people don't think they're in that job, they know they're not alone. That's why it's so important, and that's why I want you guys to know everything that I know. And maybe you will if I ever get caught up on my paperwork. But, so the case files just keep coming in, and I only got so much free time. So any other questions? Yes, sir.
Have you ever come across anything regarding unearthing, like say giants like humans, like that are properly proportioned? Not people suffering from gigantism or anything like that.
Are you talking about live or?
No, I'm talking about probably like buried or things like that.
You might want to talk to Jim Whitehead back there.
Okay,
He's
I'll
got
do
the
that.
best story I know of.
Okay.
So
Fair
I'm
enough.
always asking about that. So
Okay.
he's got a lot of left field stories. Yes, sir, Rick.
I'm trying to ask you about the so-called pterodactyl deal. Do you think that might be a giant bat sometime?
Well, to be honest with you, that was what I thought for a long time, because the ones that I saw, for some strange reason, I focused on the wings. And so the only part that I really got a good look at, I found out later, that's actually pretty common for eyewitnesses to focus on one part of the body of the creature and to kind of have like gaps in their memory about the other parts. So I was focused on the wings, and all I really remembered real well was the wings. And so I really don't have a whole lot. It's like I remember it having a head, but I don't remember what kind of head it was, or whether it had a vein on the end, or or a beak or whatever. It just kind of had a head, But so that's what I thought for a long time. And as a matter of fact, that was my first internet search, was giant bats in Oklahoma. And so I kind of came up empty-handed, and I actually used to do bat surveys, bat population surveys at alabaster cabins. So I called down there and talked to one of their wildlife biologists, and I asked them, I was like, well, what's the biggest bat that you guys get down here? And they're like, well, that's a big brown bat. And I'm like, well, how big is a big brown bat? He's like, well, it's a wingspan of about 12 inches. I'm like, well, that's not one of them. But then I found those giant bats that they have down in South America. You've seen pictures of those. They've got like a wingspan of like this. And for a while I thought, it's the closest thing, as close as I'm going to get. Of course, the one I saw was a lot bigger than that. Both of the ones that I saw were a lot bigger than that. And so it just kind of went into a category in my brain. It's like, well, I guess I'm just going to have to take that and put it on the I don't know shelf, and it stayed there for a long time. Which is a shame. So anyway, any other questions? No, because if you're not going to ask any questions, I'm going to get a drink and sit down. All right. And we're going to take a break for the next 5 minutes for the next speaker.